The alarm sounded through the ship at 3 in the morning. Captain Bora ran through the metal corridors of the eternal dawn, her boots echoing against the floor. Her security team had found something in the cargo bay, something they weren't expecting. When she arrived, 6 guards stood in a circle, weapons ready. In the center, pressed against a supply crate, was a small figure. Bora's breath caught. It was a Velothi child. The girl's skin looked like crystal, catching the light in strange patterns. But it was dull, almost gray. That wasn't normal for the Velothi. The child was shaking. Her eyes were wide with fear. She looked maybe 12 years old, though Bora knew alien ages were hard to judge. The girl pressed herself smaller against the crate, trying to disappear. Bora held up her hand. Her guards lowered their weapons slightly. This wasn't an invader. This was a terrified child who had somehow ended up on a human ship in the middle of space. "Get the Empress," Bora said quietly. "Right now." 15 minutes. Later, Empress Harin entered the cargo bay wearing a simple robe over her night clothes. At 52 years old, she had led humanity across the stars for 2 decades. She was used to waking up for emergencies, but this was different. Harin looked at the Velothi girl and saw everything in an instant. The child was starving, alone, far from home, and absolutely terrified of the humans surrounding her. "Everyone out," Harin said. "Except you, Bora." The guards hesitated. The captain nodded, and they left. Now it was just 3 of them in the cargo bay. Harin slowly walked, closer, moving the way you would approach a wounded animal. She sat down on the floor several feet from the child. "My name is Harin," she said softly. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you." The Velothi girl stared at her. She didn't speak. The Velothi communicated through sounds that humans couldn't make, musical tones that carried meaning, but they could understand human languages. The girl understood. She just didn't trust. Harin knew this moment mattered. She could call the Velothi government. Return the child immediately. Follow all the proper channels. That would be the safe choice. The political choice. But something in the girl's eyes stopped her. She had seen that look before in soldiers after battle, in refugees fleeing destroyed colonies. It was the look of someone who had been through something terrible. "Are you hungry?" Harin asked, the slightest nod. "Progress." Bora brought food and water. The girl ate slowly, carefully, as if the food might be taken away. Harin watched and wondered how long the child had been hiding on her ship. How had she even gotten here? They had been at a neutral station 3 days ago for diplomatic meetings. The girl must have snuck aboard then. That night, Harin made her decision. She would keep the child in her personal quarters until they figured out what to do. She couldn't just hand her over without knowing why she had run away. Something was wrong, and Harin needed to understand what. She led the girl through the quiet ship to her rooms. The Velothi child followed at a distance, ready to run at any moment. Harin showed her a small bedroom connected to her own quarters. Clean sheets, soft pillows. Safety. "You can sleep here," Harin said. "The door doesn't lock from the outside. You can leave whenever you want, but I hope you'll stay until morning." The girl looked at the bed like she didn't believe it was real. Then she looked at Harin with those huge crystalline eyes. She made a sound, a soft musical note that felt like a question. "You're welcome," Harin answered, guessing at the meaning. Harin left the door open between their rooms and tried to sleep. She couldn't. She kept thinking about the child in the next room, about what bringing a Velothi aboard meant for humanity's already fragile relationship with the alien empire. The Velothi thought humans were primitive, barely worthy of notice. They had maintained strict distance for 30 years, and now their child was sleeping on a human ship. Around dawn, Harin heard crying. Not loud, just soft, broken sounds that made her chest hurt. She got up and quietly went to the girl's door. The child was curled up on the bed, shaking with sobs. Whatever she had run from, it still haunted her. Harin didn't think. She just walked in and sat on the edge of the bed. The girl looked up, startled, but didn't pull away. Without planning it, Harin began to hum. It was an old song her grandmother had taught her, passed down through generations. A folk song from Korea, from Earth, from a world most humans had never seen but all remembered. The song was called Arirang. The melody was simple but beautiful, sad and hopeful at the same time. It spoke of mountains and separation, of longing and return. Harin's voice was soft in the dark room. Something incredible happened. The Velothi girl stopped crying. Her crystalline skin began to glow faintly, catching the song like light through a prism. She made a sound, a harmonic tone that matched Harin's melody. They were singing together, human and alien, in a moment that should have been impossible. When the song ended, the girl looked at Harin differently. The fear was still there, but something else too. Trust, maybe. Or at least the possibility of trust. Over the next 3 days, Harin spent every free moment with the child. She learned the girl's name was Velsina. She was the daughter of someone important in the Velothi government, though Velsina wouldn't say more. She had run away because of something called correction, a word that made her skin turn gray with fear. Harin taught Velsina more songs. Earth songs, she called them. Lullabies her mother had sung, work songs from the colony where she grew up. Happy melodies and sad ones. Songs about love and loss, about hope and memory. The Velothi were beings of sound and frequency, and music spoke to them in ways words couldn't. Velsina would listen with complete focus, her crystalline features glowing with different colors as emotions washed through her. Then she would try to sing back, her harmonic voice blending with the human melodies in strange and beautiful ways. Earth song, Velsina said one evening, speaking human words for the first time. Her voice was musical even when speaking. Sing Earth song again? Harin sang Arirang again and again. And every time Velsina asked, which was often, the song became their bridge, their shared language, their connection across the vast difference between their species. But time was running out. On the 4th day, Ambassador Tae Yang came to Harin's quarters. His face was pale. "They know," he said. "The Velothi High Council knows she's here. They're calling it a kidnapping. High Consul Velmora, the girl's mother, is demanding her return. They've mobilized their fleet." Harin felt her heart sink. War. They were talking about war over a child who had run away on her own. She looked at Velsina, who was sitting in the corner, her skin turning dark with understanding. "We have to return her," Tai Yang said. "We can't risk conflict over this." Harin knew he was right. She had known from the beginning this couldn't last, but it hurt more than she expected. In 3 days, this strange child had worked her way into Harin's heart. "Tell them we'll meet them at the neutral station," Harin said. "But I need one more night." That last evening, Harin and Velsina sat together in the observation room, watching stars stream past. Harin sang every Earth song she knew. Velsina harmonized with each one, her voice growing stronger and more confident. They were both pretending this wasn't goodbye. The next day at the neutral station, High Consul Velmora arrived. She was tall and imposing, her crystalline skin perfect and cold. She looked at Harin with barely concealed contempt. Humans were primitive in Velothi eyes. Emotional. Weak. But when Velmora called for her daughter, something unexpected happened. Velsina didn't run to her mother. Instead, she clung to Harin, her small hands gripping the Empress's robe. She began to sing, her voice filling the station, with the melody of Arirang, the Earth song that had become her comfort and her joy. Velmora stood frozen. Her daughter, properly educated in Velothi culture, was singing a human song. And more than that, she was choosing the human over her own mother. Harin gently loosened Velsina's grip. She knelt down to the girl's level and sang one last line of Arirang, soft and sad. Then she took Velsina's hand and placed it in her mother's. "Take care of her," Harin said to Velmora. "She's special." Velmora said nothing. She pulled Velsina away, back to their ship, back to their world. Harin watched them go, knowing she had just changed something fundamental. She had shown a Velothi child compassion when she was afraid. She had shared her culture, her songs, her humanity. And somehow, Ha-Rin knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was just the beginning. 15 years passed like a long, cold winter. The Velothi took Velsina home and closed every door behind them. No messages, no meetings, no communication at all. It was as if humanity had committed some unforgivable crime, though all Ha-Rin had done was show kindness to a frightened child. The Velothi used their influence across the galaxy. They whispered to other alien species that humans were dangerous, unpredictable, culturally contaminating. One by one, potential allies turned away. Humanity found itself alone among the stars, isolated by an empire that feared what they represented. Ha-Rin was 67 now. Her hair had gone gray and lines creased her face. She still led the human expanse from the flagship Horizon's promise, but the weight of those 15 years sat heavy on her shoulders. Sometimes late at night she wondered if she had made the right choice, if showing compassion to one child had doomed 40 billion humans to isolation. But she still sang the Earth songs, and she still remembered Velsina's face when the melodies made her crystalline skin glow with wonder. Her library aboard the Horizon's promise had become her sanctuary. Digital archives filled every wall, containing everything humanity had saved from Earth. Music, literature, art, history. The treasures of a homeworld most people had never seen, but all of them remembered. Ha-Rin spent hours there, preserving and cataloging, making sure nothing was lost. One evening, her granddaughter Hee-Jin found her there. At 26, Hee-Jin was the heir to leadership, being prepared to one day take Ha-Rin's place. She was everything the future needed: smart, passionate, idealistic. She had grown up on stories of Earth, of the old world that lived now only in memory and song. "Grandmother," Hee-Jin said softly, "will you tell me the story again?" Ha-Rin smiled. She knew which story Hee-Jin meant. The story of the alien girl who loved Earth songs. "Please," Hee-Jin said, sitting down beside her grandmother. So Ha-Rin told it again. How Velsina appeared on the eternal dawn, frightened and alone. How music became their bridge. How the girl sang Arirang with such pure joy that it felt like the universe itself was harmonizing. The story had become legend among humans, a reminder that understanding between different beings was possible, even if it seemed impossible now. When the story ended, Ha-Rin sang Arirang. Her voice was older now, weathered by time, but still beautiful. Hee-Jin closed her eyes and listened, feeling the weight of heritage and hope in every note. But hope was becoming harder to hold on to. In the council chambers, Admiral Jiwoo presented evidence that made everyone nervous. The Velothi were expanding their territory. They were pressuring neutral species to sign treaties that excluded humans. Trade routes were being redirected. Resources became harder to access. "They're boxing us in," Jiwoo said, pointing to star maps that showed Velothi influence spreading like a net around human space. She was 55, a career military officer who had risen from the Mars colonies. She believed in strength and preparation, in never being caught defenseless. "We need to fortify our borders," Jiwoo continued. "Build up our fleet. Show them we won't be intimidated." Dr. Sung-ho disagreed. At 43, the xenolinguist had spent his career studying alien cultures, trying to understand them. He stood up, his voice calm but firm. "Military buildup will only confirm what they already believe about us," he said. "That we're aggressive, primitive, dangerous. It will justify whatever actions they're planning. So what do you suggest?" Jiwoo asked, frustrated. "We just wait and hope they don't attack?" "I suggest we send them our culture," Sung-ho replied. "Broadcast human art and music across known space. Show them who we really are, not what they fear we are. Let them see our creativity, our diversity, our humanity." The council chamber erupted in argument. Half thought Sung-ho was naive. The other half thought Jiwoo was reckless. Ha-Rin listened to both sides, understanding the fear that drove each argument. Finally, she raised her hand for silence. "We'll do both," she said. "Admiral Jiwoo, strengthen our defenses. I want every colony protected, but do it quietly. No aggressive posturing." Then she turned to Sung-ho. "And we'll launch your cultural project. We'll call it the Harmony Project. We'll broadcast the best of humanity into space. Our music, our stories, everything that makes us who we are. Including the Earth songs," Hee-Jin added quietly. Ha-Rin nodded, especially the Earth songs. It was a gamble. The Velothi might ignore the broadcast completely, Or worse, see them as another example of human primitiveness, their emotional need to be understood. But Harin had to try. She couldn't let fear silence the songs. That would mean the Velati had already won. For 3 months, humanity broadcast their culture across the stars. Every day, new transmissions went out. Symphonies and folk songs, poetry and stories, visual art from 1,000 different colonies, each one reflecting both Earth's heritage and their own new identity. It was beautiful and desperate and defiant all at once. Then, on a quiet morning, everything changed. The communications officer burst into Harin's office, out of breath. "Your Majesty, we've received a signal. It's Velathi in origin, but it's not from their government. It's different." Harin's heart began to race. "Show me." The signal played through the office speakers. It was music, but unlike anything they had heard before. Velathi harmonics, pure and complex, but woven through them was something unmistakable. The melody of Arirang. Distorted, changed, blended with alien tones, but definitely, impossibly. Arirang. Harin stood frozen, tears running down her face. She knew that voice. Even after 15 years, even changed and grown, she knew it. Dr. Sung-ho was called in immediately. He worked through the night, decoding the message layer by layer. The Velathi language was complex, based on frequencies and harmonics that didn't translate easily into human understanding. But Sung-ho was brilliant, and this message wanted to be understood. By morning, he had it. He came to Harin's quarters, his hands shaking slightly as he held out the translation. "It's a location," he said. "Coordinates in neutral space. An abandoned moon with no strategic value, and there's a word repeated 3 times, in Korean." Harin looked at the screen. The word was simple, basic, but it carried the weight of 15 years, remember? "It's her," Harin said softly. "It's Velsina." The question was why? Why reach out now after all this time? Why risk contact when it could mean severe punishment from her own people? What could possibly be important enough? Within an hour, Harin called an emergency council meeting. She told them about the signal, about the coordinates, about the single word in Korean, and then she told them what she was going to do. "I'm going to meet her," Harin said. Admiral Ji-woo exploded. "Absolutely not. It's obviously a trap. They're luring you out to capture or kill you." "If they wanted me dead, there are easier ways," Harin replied calmly. "Then it's a political trap," Ji-woo insisted. "They'll use this meeting to make us look desperate or weak. Your Majesty, you cannot go." Harin stood up and everyone fell silent. She was still the Empress, still the leader who had guided them through 15 years of isolation without losing her principles. 15 years ago, a child trusted me when she had no reason to trust any human, Harin said. She was alone and afraid, and I chose compassion over protocol. Now she's reaching out again, and I will not fail her by choosing fear over trust. "I'll go with you," Hyejin said immediately. "And I will too," Dr. Sung-ho added. "You'll need a translator." Commander Jae-hyun, the security chief, stepped forward. He was 39, a combat veteran who had lost friends in skirmishes with Velathi-aligned species. He didn't trust this situation at all, but his job was to protect the Empress, not to agree with her. "If you're going, I'm going," he said grimly. "Someone needs to keep you alive if this goes wrong." Admiral Ji-woo realized she wasn't going to win this argument. "Fine, but take a fast ship with good weapons. And if anything seems wrong, you run." "Understood?" Harin nodded. "Understood." 3 days later, a small human ship left the Horizon's Promise and headed for the coordinates. Inside were Harin, Hyejin, Dr. Sung-ho, and Commander Jae-hyun, along with a minimal crew. They traveled in silence, each person lost in their own thoughts about what they might find. Harin stood in the observation deck, watching stars stream past. She tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. Instead, she hummed Arirang softly, letting the melody calm her nerves. Somewhere out there, Velsina was waiting. The frightened child who had become a legend. The girl who remembered the Earth songs. And somehow, against all reason and logic, Harin felt hope stirring in her chest again. The moon was gray and lifeless, spinning slowly in space far from any star system that mattered. No resources, no strategic value, nothing that would bring anyone here except someone who wanted to hide. Perfect for a secret meeting. Harin's ship descended toward the surface. Scanners showed a small structure, barely large enough for one person, a basic shelter with minimal life support, and one heat signature inside. Commander Jae-hyun checked his weapons for the 3rd time. Everything about this situation made him nervous. They were in neutral space, far from any backup, meeting someone who might be leading them into a trap. His job was to protect the Empress, and right now he felt like he was failing at that job just by being here. But Harin was calm. She stood near the airlock, waiting. Hee-jin stood beside her grandmother, nervous but excited. Dr. Sung-ho was running one last check on his translation equipment, making sure he could understand whatever was about to happen. The ship landed. The airlock opened, and they stepped out onto the barren moon's surface, their boots crunching on ancient dust. The shelter's door opened. A figure emerged, tall and elegant. Velothi features caught the dim light from their ship, crystalline skin shimmering with complex patterns. She had grown, changed, but Harin would have known her anywhere. Velsina stood 20 feet away, looking at them, looking at Harin. For a moment, nobody moved. 15 years collapsed into nothing. Two beings, human and alien, who had shared something precious and then been torn apart by forces beyond their control. Then Velsina did something that made Jae-hyun's hand move toward his weapon. She raised her arm and extended her hand, palm forward. A human gesture. A greeting from Earth performed by an alien who should know nothing about such things. Harin's breath caught. She walked forward, closing the distance. Up close, she could see the changes. Velsina was 27 now, fully grown. But her eyes, those crystalline eyes, held the same curiosity and intelligence they had 15 years ago. Velsina spoke, and her voice was music made into words, harmonics blending with perfect Korean. "Will you sing me the Earth song again?" Emotion hit Harin like a wave. Joy and sorrow and relief all mixed together. Before she could think about protocol or propriety or what was proper between an Empress and an alien, she stepped forward and embraced Velsina. The Velothi didn't pull away. Instead, she returned the embrace. Physical contact was rare in Velothi culture, reserved only for the most intimate moments. But Velsina held Harin like she was something precious that had been lost and found again. Jae-hyun's hand stayed near his weapon, but he didn't draw it. Hee-jin had tears running down her face. Dr. Sung-ho was making notes documenting this impossible moment. Finally, they separated. Velsina gestured to her small shelter. "Please come inside. We have much to discuss and not much time." The shelter was basic, one room with minimal furniture, communications equipment, and supplies for a few weeks. Velsina had been living here alone, waiting for Harin to receive her message and respond. The risk she had taken was enormous. They sat in a circle on the floor, human custom adopted by the Velothi. Velsina began to speak, and her story poured out like a song that had been held back too long. When her mother took her back to Velothi space 15 years ago, they said she had been contaminated. Corrupted by human influence, they put her through what they called correction. It was re-education, cultural cleansing designed to erase everything she had learned on the human ship. They tried to make her forget the Earth songs. Forget Harin's kindness. Forget that humans had shown her compassion when she was afraid. But the memories remained, stubborn and bright. Velsina learned to hide them, to pretend she had been corrected. But inside, the song still played. As she grew older, she found others. Other Velothi who questioned their culture's rigid superiority. They called themselves the Resonance, believing that different frequencies could harmonize rather than compete. They were a secret movement, hidden within Velothi society, afraid to speak openly about their beliefs. Velsina became one of their leaders. She studied human culture through forbidden archives. She learned about adaptability, about emotional depth, about the strength that came from diversity rather than uniformity. And she realized something terrifying. "The hardliners are planning something," Velsina said, her voice dropping low. "My mother leads them. They call it the cultural purge. They want to eliminate species they consider corrupting influences. They want to forcibly assimilate or destroy civilizations that don't meet their standards of cultural purity." Harin felt cold, and humanity is on that list. "Humanity is at the top of that list," Velsina confirmed. "Because you're adaptable, creative, emotional, everything the hardliners fear most. They see you as a virus that could infect other species with dangerous ideas about individual expression and cultural evolution." Jae-hyun stood up, pacing. When are they planning this attack?" "I don't know exactly," Velsina admitted. "Soon, within a year, maybe less. They're building support, gathering allies, preparing the military assets, but there's still time to stop it. How? Harin asked. How do we stop an empire that won't even talk to us? Velsina leaned forward, her crystalline features catching the shelter's dim light. The resonants are more numerous than the hardliners realize. We have support among younger Velothi, among scientists and artists, among those who have secretly consumed other cultures and found them beautiful rather than dangerous. But we're afraid to act because we lack proof that another way is possible. She paused, then continued. I need you to help me show them. A cultural summit, a place where humans and Velothi can meet openly, share their art and music and philosophy. If we can demonstrate that our cultures can coexist, can even enhance each other, it might sway enough moderate Velothi to prevent the purge. Dr. Sung-ho was nodding, seeing the possibility. But Jae-hyun saw the danger. It's a trap, Jae-hyun said flatly. Bring all our leaders and cultural representatives to one place? Make ourselves vulnerable? The hardliners would love that. One attack could decapitate our entire cultural and political leadership. He's right about the danger, Velsina acknowledged. The hardliners will try to sabotage any summit. They'll see it as proof that the resonants are traitors. But the alternative is war. A war humanity cannot win against the full might of the Velothi Empire and their allies. Hyejin spoke for the first time since entering the shelter. We have to try. This is exactly the kind of bridge my grandmother built when she sang to you. One song, one moment of connection, and it changed you enough that 15 years later you're risking your life to reach out. Imagine what could happen if thousands of people from both our species had that same experience. Harin looked at her granddaughter with pride. Then she turned to Velsina. How long would we have to prepare? 6 months, Velsina said. I need that time to rally the resonants, to secure the location, to build political support among moderate Velothi. And you need that time to convince your own people that this is worth the risk. Harin stood up and walked to the shelter's small window, looking out at the gray moon's surface. 6 months to prepare for something that could save her species or destroy what was left of human leadership. 6 months to convince people who had spent 15 years isolated and afraid that they should take an even bigger risk. But she thought about Velsina, spending 15 years hiding her true thoughts, secretly studying human culture, finding courage in the memory of an Earth song. She thought about all the resonants, aliens who believed different voices could harmonize, and she thought about what humanity stood for. Hope, adaptation, the belief that understanding was always worth trying for. She turned back to face them all. We'll do it. We'll prepare for your summit, and we'll bring the best of what humanity has to offer. Jae-hyun looked like he wanted to argue, but he stayed silent. This was above his pay grade. His job now was to make sure this crazy plan had the best chance of success possible. Velsina's relief was visible, her crystalline skin brightening. Thank you. You don't know what this means. What you mean to me, to all of us who believe in a different future. Before they left, Velsina made one more request. She asked Harin to sing, not for any political reason, not as part of any plan, just because it had been 15 years, and she had missed the Earth songs more than she could say. So there, in a small shelter on a forgotten moon, Harin sang Arirang one more time. Her voice filled the tiny space, carrying all the longing and hope the old folk song had always contained, and Velsina sang with her, blending Velothi harmonics with human melody, creating something new and beautiful. When the song ended, they all sat in silence for a moment. Even Jae-hyun, who had been ready for combat, seemed moved. 6 months, Harin said finally. We'll send you secure communications. Coordinate the details. And Velsina, be careful. If your mother discovers what you're doing... I know the risks, Velsina interrupted gently. You taught me that some things are worth the risk. Compassion over fear. Connection over isolation. Remember? Harin smiled. I remember. They left the moon as quietly as they had arrived. During the journey back to human space, Harin stood in the observation deck again, but this time Hyejin joined her. Do you think we can actually do this? Hyejin asked. Harin thought about the question, about the odds stacked against them, about the hardliners. The announcement hit human space like a shockwave. Empress Harin stood before cameras, broadcast to every colony and settlement, and told them about the summit, about Velsina, about the resonance, about the chance, however slim, to prevent war through cultural exchange. The reaction was exactly what she expected. Divided, fierce and loud. On New Seoul, a frontier colony near Velothi space, Governor Dal watched the broadcast with barely controlled anger. He was 50 years old, and he had spent the last 20 living on the edge of potential conflict. His sister had died in a raid by Velathi-aligned pirates. His colony had been denied trade routes because of Velathi pressure, and now the Empress wanted them to trust these aliens. He called an emergency meeting of the Frontier Coalition, a loose alliance of colonies that felt ignored by the central government. Within hours, they had drafted a formal objection. Within days, protests erupted on a dozen worlds. But there were supporters, too, young people who had grown up on stories of Earth and dreamed of a galaxy where humanity wasn't alone. Artists who saw the summit as a chance to share their work. Scientists curious about Velathi knowledge, and many ordinary people who were simply tired of fear and isolation. Harin gave another speech, this one more personal. She told Velsina's full story publicly for the first time. How a frightened child had appeared on her ship. How a simple song had created a bond across species. How that same child, now grown, was risking everything to prevent war. "We are humanity," Harin said, her voice carrying across the stars. "We have always found our strength not in walls and weapons, but in our ability to adapt, to learn, to connect." That child remembered our songs for 15 years. Will we forget what our own songs teach us? Will we let fear silence the music? The speech swayed enough people. Not everyone. Not even most people. But enough that preparations could begin. Harin assembled the cultural delegation carefully. She needed humanity's best. People who could demonstrate the depth and beauty of human civilization. She started with the artists. HFY was 31 years old and already famous across human space. She had dedicated her life to preserving Earth's musical traditions while evolving them for new worlds. When Harin asked her to lead the musical delegation, HFY accepted immediately. "This is what music is for," HFY said. "Building bridges, expressing what words can't. If we can't reach them through our songs, we can't reach them at all." She began composing immediately, new pieces that blended traditional Earth melodies with the sounds of space, of colony life, of humanity's journey across the stars. But she kept coming back to Arirang. That simple folk song had started everything. It needed to be part of the performance. Hai-Jin worked with Dr. Sung-ho on the cultural presentations. They prepared exhibits on human emotion, family structures, art movements, literature, everything that made humanity unique. Sung-ho insisted they include the messy parts too, the conflicts and contradictions. Real culture was complex, not sanitized. "If we only show them our best face, they'll see through it," Sung-ho explained. "They need to see our struggles too, how we overcome division, how we find unity in diversity. That's the real lesson." While the cultural team prepared, Admiral Jiwoo worked on security. She coordinated with Commander Jae-hyun, running every possible scenario. They couldn't prevent the summit, but they could try to keep everyone alive if things went wrong. "I want surveillance on every level," Jiwoo said. "Sensors watching for weapons, explosives, anything dangerous. Security teams in civilian clothes. Escape routes planned. If this turns into a trap, we get our people out." Jae-hyun nodded grimly. He had the same feeling he'd had before every combat mission, that sense that something was going to go wrong, and they needed to be ready when it did. 3 months into preparations, the first attempt on Harin's life came. She was walking through the Horizon's Promise when Jae-hyun suddenly shoved her sideways. A projectile screamed past where her head had been, embedding itself in the wall. Guards tackled the shooter before he could fire again. The would-be assassin was human. A colonist from New Seoul. Jae-hyun interrogated him personally, and the man's story came out in broken pieces. He believed Harin was betraying humanity, that the summit would make them weak, that someone had to stop it, but there was more. References to others who thought the same way. Mentions of coordinated plans. He didn't know the full scope, just his own small part. Someone had recruited him, given him the weapon, told him where Harin would be. "There's an organized conspiracy," Jae-hyun reported to Harin. "Human extremists who want the summit to fail. We're still tracking down the leadership, but I'd bet anything Governor Dal is involved." Harin looked at the report, feeling tired. Enemies from outside she had expected. But enemies within? People who would kill their own Empress to prevent peace. She sent a coded message to Velsina through their secure channel. A warning. If human extremists were planning sabotage, there might be Velathi hardliners planning the same thing. Velsina's reply came back quickly. She had suspected as much. Her mother, High Consul Velmora, had been unusually quiet about the summit. not opposing it publicly but not supporting it either. That silence worried Velsina more than open hostility would have, but it was too late to turn back. The summit was scheduled. The location was confirmed. Harmony Station, a massive neutral facility built specifically for this purpose in unclaimed space. Thousands of humans and Velothi would attend. If they canceled now, it would confirm every fear on both sides. Harin made her choice. They would proceed. But everyone going to Harmony Station needed to understand the risk. She wouldn't order anyone into danger without full knowledge. She gathered the cultural delegation in a secure room. Acha and her musicians, Sungho and his scholars, artists, writers, philosophers, all the people who would represent humanity's soul to the galaxy. There's a conspiracy, Harin said bluntly. Extremists on both sides who want this summit to fail. There may be an attack. I can't guarantee your safety. If any of you want to withdraw, I'll understand. No judgment, no consequences, nobody left. Acha spoke for the group. Your Majesty, we've all spent our lives trying to preserve and share human culture. If we're not willing to risk something for the chance to share it with another species, what's the point? We're going. Harin felt pride mixed with fear. These people were brave or maybe just foolish, but they were humanity at its best. The final month passed in a blur of preparation. Security drills, cultural rehearsals, diplomatic briefings. Hai-Jin barely slept working around the clock. She felt the weight of what they were attempting. One summit, to save billions of lives. Late one night, she found her grandmother in the library again. Harin was playing old recordings of Earth music, letting the sounds wash over her. Are you scared? Hai-Jin asked. Harin smiled sadly. Terrified. But I was terrified 15 years ago too, when I chose to keep Velsina instead of immediately returning her. Fear is just part of doing the right thing. What if it goes wrong? What if people die because of our choice? Then people will die trying to build something better instead of dying in a war they never wanted. Harin replied. I can live with that. Can you? Hai-Jin thought about it, really thought about it. Then she nodded. Yes, I can. The day finally came. Ships departed from human worlds, converging on Harmony Station. Harin's flagship led them, carrying the Empress, her heir, their best artists and thinkers, and enough security to fight a small war if necessary. As they approached the station, they received confirmation. Velothi ships were arriving too. The summit was actually happening. Two species that had avoided each other for a generation were about to meet face to face. Jae-hyun ran final security checks. Ji-woo positioned military ships at a discreet distance, ready to intervene if needed. Acha and her musicians did one last rehearsal. Sungho reviewed his cultural presentations one final time, and Harin stood in her quarters singing Arirang softly to herself. The song that had started everything, the melody that had touched an alien child's heart and set all of this in motion. Yijin came to collect her grandmother for the opening ceremony. She found Harin by the window looking out at Harmony Station growing larger as they approached. Ready? Hai-Jin asked. Harin turned and smiled. No, but I never am, come on. Let's go change the galaxy. They walked together toward the docking bay, toward Harmony Station, toward the moment when humanity would either find its place among the stars or lose everything trying. Behind them, hidden in the data streams and encrypted messages flowing between human and Velothi extremists, a conspiracy moved into its final phase. Governor Dal and High Consul Velmora had coordinated their plans carefully. When the time came, they would prove that harmony between species was impossible. They would destroy the summit, and in the chaos they would destroy any hope for peace. But for now, Harin walked toward the future with hope still bright in her heart, unaware that the greatest test was yet to come. Harmony Station was magnificent. The massive structure hung in space, built from materials provided by both species. Human engineering and Velothi aesthetics merged into something neither could have created alone. It was supposed to be a symbol, a promise, a beginning. The opening ceremony drew thousands. Humans filled one side of the grand hall, Velothi the other. The air hummed with tension and possibility. These two species hadn't gathered like this in a generation. The last time had ended in mutual suspicion and withdrawal. This time had to be different. Harin walked to the center platform, her formal robes flowing. She could feel every eye on her, human and alien. Across from her, Velsina stood with the Velothi delegation. Her crystalline skin glowed with complex patterns, reflecting both nervousness and hope. But Harin's attention caught on another Velathi. High Consul Velmora stood at the back of the alien delegation, tall and imposing. Her expression was unreadable, but her posture radiated disapproval. She had come, but she had not come to support peace. Elder Velkaris, a moderate Velathi leader, gave the first address. He spoke of cultural exchange, of mutual benefit, of the possibility that differences could strengthen rather than divide. His words were careful, diplomatic, but genuine. Then it was Harin's turn. She spoke simply from the heart. She talked about fear and courage, about the choice between isolation and connection. She told them that humanity came not as conquerors or supplicants, but as fellow travelers through the universe, hoping to learn and share. Velsina translated Harin's words into Velathi harmonics. But she did more than translate. She added emotional undertones, musical layers that conveyed meaning beyond words. Some Velathi in the audience visibly reacted, their crystalline features brightening with understanding. Over the next 3 days, the real work began. Cultural exchanges in smaller groups. Humans taught Velathi about storytelling, about improvisation in music and art, about the messy beauty of emotional expression. Velathi shared their mathematical elegance, their harmonic philosophy, their precise understanding of order and balance. Slowly, connections formed. A human musician discovered that Velathi harmonics could create sounds human instruments never could. A Velathi scholar found human poetry expressed concepts their own literature had never captured. Scientists from both species realized they had been working on similar problems from completely different angles. Even Jae-hyun, suspicious and watchful, saw moments that made him wonder. He watched a Velathi child laugh at a human comedian's physical humor. He saw an elderly Velathi listening to human folk music with tears crystallizing on their face. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. But not everyone was moved. Governor Dal watched from the human side with growing anger. High Consul Velmora observed from the Velathi side with cold calculation. Their conspiracy was ready. They just needed the perfect moment. The moment came on the 4th day. HFY had prepared a grand performance, the centerpiece of the cultural exchange. The entire summit would gather in the main auditorium. Human musicians and Velathi sound weavers would perform together, creating something unprecedented. The auditorium filled. Thousands of beings from 2 species, sitting together, waiting to see if music could truly bridge the gap between them. Harin sat in the front row with Heejin beside her. Velsina would be on stage, part of the performance. The performance began. Human strings blended with Velathi harmonics. Drums provided rhythm while alien frequencies added texture. It was strange and beautiful. Neither purely human nor purely Velathi, but something new. Then HFY began to sing Arirang. The Old Earth song filled the auditorium, simple and pure. Velsina joined her, adding Velathi harmonics that made the melody soar. The 2 voices intertwined, human and alien, creating a sound that had never existed before this moment. The audience sat transfixed. Even the hardliners seemed moved, if only for a moment. Harin felt tears on her face. This was it. This was what she had hoped for. Proof that harmony was possible. The first bomb detonated in the East Wing. The explosion shook the entire station. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. The music stopped abruptly as people began to panic. Then a second explosion in the West Wing. Then a third. Jae-hyun was moving before the second blast. He grabbed Harin and Hyejin, pulling them toward the emergency exits. His security teams deployed throughout the station, trying to maintain order in the chaos. But it wasn't just explosions. Life support began failing in sections of the station. Someone had sabotaged the environmental systems. People were being trapped in areas losing atmosphere. Both human and Velathi suffocating together. On the main broadcast channel, High Consul Velmora's voice rang out. She declared the summit a failure, proof of human treachery. She showed evidence, carefully fabricated, that human extremists had planned this attack alone. She called for the Velathi fleet to withdraw and for the Galactic Council to sanction humanity as dangerous barbarians. Harin fought to reach a communication terminal. Her arm was injured from falling debris, but she had to respond. She had to tell the truth. But the systems were locked, communications jammed. Velsina saw what was happening, saw her mother's betrayal playing out exactly as she had feared. She could run, save herself, claim she had been deceived by the humans. But she had spent 15 years hiding the truth, and she was done hiding. She moved through the damaged station, using her Velothi abilities to interface with failing systems. She stabilized life support in a trapped section, saving 30 humans and Velothi who would have died. She manually opened jammed doors, creating escape routes, and she wasn't alone. Other residents, the secret Velothi movement that believed in harmony, saw what she was doing. They joined her. Human engineers worked alongside Velothi technicians, desperately trying to save the station and everyone on it. In the crisis, species didn't matter. Only survival did. Dr. Sung-ho was in a control room with a mixed team of humans and Velothi, analyzing the attack pattern. Something didn't add up. The explosions were coordinated too perfectly, and the system's failures followed patterns that required knowledge of both human and Velothi technology. This wasn't just humans, he said suddenly. This was coordinated. Both species, someone on both sides planned this together. He found the proof in encrypted communications hidden in the station's databanks, messages between Governor Dal and High Consul Velmora, planning the attack, coordinating the timing, agreeing to use the chaos to discredit the peace movement on both sides. Sung-ho transmitted the evidence to every screen, every terminal, every broadcast channel he could access. The conspiracy was exposed. The truth spread through the damaged station like wildfire. Velsina found her mother in a secure section, preparing to evacuate. She stood between Velmora and the exit, her crystalline features glowing with anger and sorrow. How could you? Velsina's voice was harmony and rage combined. How could you kill innocents, betray our people, just to maintain your idea of cultural purity? I did it to save our species from contamination, Velmora replied coldly. You were corrupted by them. You forgot what it means to be Velothi. No, Velsina said. You forgot what it means to be alive. To grow, to change, to harmonize with new voices instead of silencing them. She broadcast the confrontation across all channels. Every human and Velothi on the station heard her denounce her mother's conspiracy, heard her declare that fear and pride were not strength, and that the future belonged to those brave enough to reach across the void. You taught me our culture was superior, Velsina said, but it was a human who showed me compassion when I was frightened and alone. It was a human song that taught me what connection truly means. I choose harmony over isolation. I choose courage over fear. Security forces from both species moved in. Governor Dal and High Consul Velmora were arrested by their own people, facing charges of terrorism and conspiracy to commit genocide. Their plan had failed, but not before killing 47 humans and 23 Velothi. As the immediate crisis ended and rescue operations continued, Harin found Velsina in a damaged corridor. The young Velothi was exhausted, her crystalline skin dull from exertion, but she had saved lives, dozens of them. Harin embraced her, and this time there was no hesitation, no cultural barrier, just two beings who had fought for the same dream and paid the same price. They wanted to prove harmony was impossible, Velsina said quietly. Did they succeed? Harin looked around at the damaged station, at humans and Velothi working together to repair systems and treat the wounded, at the resonants who had risked everything to stand with Velsina, at the moderate Velothi who had seen the truth and chosen peace. No, Harin said. They proved the opposite. They showed that even in the worst crisis, even when everything is falling apart, we can still choose to help each other. That's the real harmony. Not perfection, but persistence. Haijin found them there. Her face was streaked with ash and tears. The casualty list is final, she said. 70 dead. 200 injured. But thousands saved because people from both species worked together. The cost was terrible, but the summit hadn't failed. It had been attacked, sabotaged, nearly destroyed, and it had survived. More than that, it had proven its own premise. In the crucible of crisis, harmony had held.